at the F100 Western Nats. Welcome to the video, and this should be interesting. It's open to 83 and older Ford commercial pickups, F-Series trucks. I imagine COEs and N-Series. We could have brought the N600, I suppose, though it's loaded with steel and needs washing. But yeah, check it out. It looks pretty cool. Okay, as we walk up from the spectator parking to the first row of classic Ford pickups, we see a lot of really cool stuff. A lot of Coyote swaps, which, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Another thing you notice too is all of the mid-50s Ford pickups have the hood tilting forward, generally the exact same kit. I'm going to have to look at one of those because it works a lot better than the stock hinge setup, which is really, really, really bad. It looks like, I think that's a supercharged Coyote there. But yeah, overall impressions, an excellent show. Huge turnout, actually. A larger turnout than I was initially expecting when I first learned about this event. Well organized, well run, and really good DJing, of course, doing all the old moldy oldie rock and roll from when you know, it was old stuff when I was a kid. But still quite popular, still quite catchy, and still quite copywritten. So, of course, any audio I happen to record isn't there. Now, one thing that I did notice, of course, on the advertisement for this event was it is open to all 83 and older Ford commercial vehicles, F100s, so forth. You know. But there were not an unsubstantial number of old body style Ford trucks such as this that were from the 90s. I think that was like a 91 right there or something. But stuff that was common as dirt when I was a kid, and still generally in my mind appreciate as being really, you know, kind of contemporary, even though at this point here they're 25 plus years old. Now, of course, we got a bunch of dent sides, which are, bump sides as well as some dent sides. Lots of, the most common engine here is a small block Ford, which, you know, that makes sense. Here's a pretty cool one that someone is setting up for as a desert racer type setup. Looks like a 351 Windsor right there. I suppose it could be something else. But you know, the Ford Cross I-Beam has a tremendous amount of suspension travel, and as a result is really, really popular because it allows you to go extremely fast over very rough terrain. It doesn't lend itself very well to handling. So it used to be conventional wisdom back in the day was if you wanted to be able to hold speed in a turn, you wanted to run a Toyota, but if you just wanted to go flat out in the rough stuff, you wanted the Ford. Ford Rangers being extremely popular for that reason. Here is an F-250 with carrying its spare motor, you know, just in case. Though when this thing fired off, clearly V8. I just thought it was kind of humorous. But having a utility bed like that in a contractor's rack is, of course, quite useful. Once again, that famous Ford Cross I-Beam front suspension. Interestingly, both Ford came out with the Cross I-Beam, and then, of course, Chevy came up with Independent, both in the early 60s. And then Dodge kept the solid I-Beam well into the late 60s. And that being a interesting point. For Dodge had advertised that solid I-beam as being more rugged and truck-like, while and downplaying the better ride quality of the Cross I-beam and the Chevy Independent. Now, there were a number of small block swapped Ford trucks here, and that's small block Chevy, excuse me, let's be specific. Small block Chevy swapped Ford trucks, which, Chevy and a Ford, that's as old as time itself. It became the popular swap once the Ford Flathead started to fall out of favor. Anyway, at F100s, F1, this is a nice looking F1 here. Though, we can debate on the patina look. I don't know if that's fake Tina there. It almost seems like it is. They just deliberately burned through a few spots on what was a pretty nice paint job, and then went ahead and put a clear coat over it. As you just saw a sneak peek, some non-Ford vehicles snuck in. El Camino next to this late 80s, early 90s F-150. Right there. When I drove a Pale Horse in our 89 Mustang, and the gentleman asked me if I wanted to be a participant or in a shower, or just as being a observer, showing up and not having the vehicle on display. Well, the car is dirty, and I drove it because I like driving it. Since this was a Ford truck show, I didn't even think that I could be show up as a show vehicle. So I didn't even try. Anyway, didn't see anything heavier than an F350. It was a cool F350, and we'll get to it. I'll point it out. Several F250s, lots of F100s, F150s. I was almost expecting a few COEs to show up, just because of how popular and how those have become show favorites in the last decade or so. But, like a COE on a 1-ton chassis with a ramp bed on the back, and maybe a early Ford hot rod on the back would have been probably a real show pleaser. But, and that was surprising. Once again, another Coyote swap. There are a few also look like 4.6, 5.4 type swaps as well, which excellent engine choices. Large as far as physical dimensions. Several of these, the full-size Broncos. Only one first-generation Bronco that I saw. That'll be at the very end. Everyone is extremely friendly. You smile and wave, and you ask them questions. This truck here is a Survivor, completely stock. It was the first year that the 360 FE was available, and the gentleman has decided he's going to keep it because it's a good running setup, and I totally agree with that philosophy. If it's got a seized engine, there's a 5-liter, much like the one in Pale Horse. If it's a good running engine, a good running drivetrain, just keep it, enjoy it, and run it. And when it dies, then maybe swap it out. Alternatively, adding a appropriately strengthened overdrive transmission of a automatic or manual, depending upon your personal preference. It was, I think, to one of these older engines produced more than enough torque for moving these trucks around. Small block Ford there, probably 302. Would be a great, thing to do. It's something that I keep looking at with our fleet of crusty stuff, is how an overdrive transmission makes a really pleasant choice. Here's one of the vendors booths that were set up. This particular company here will build anything, but you can buy it in components or kits. Now, the young gentleman behind the counter was talking to a hypothetical customer about doing something like a coyote swap, and the first thing he said is box the frame, put good brakes on it, get the chassis so it can handle the horsepower. Young gentleman right there, because if you don't have a good chassis, adding horsepower is not, it's just going to make the vehicle difficult to drive, if not downright dangerous. So, and I can't agree with him anymore. I mean, that is precisely, it's always been my philosophy. Get the chassis sorted. Once the chassis is sorted to where it runs and works the way you want it to, then add the appropriate amount of horsepower to achieve your objective. Usually just something that's spirited on the road. But anyways, now of course this classic, these two classic ones obviously are set up for handling, which of course is something that's kind of an interesting concept when it comes to pickup trucks. People are very successful at making that happen, making a good handling truck. I've seen trucks and autocrosses do quite well. Though getting there, you're talking about a race car chassis underneath a highly compromised pickup truck body. So now this is another one of the vendors, and they're showing off their wares. They sell full chassis and parts for, your choice of arrangement. That is a Y block right there. Something I actually had to ask. I'm not an expert on Y blocks. I was looking at it, and it struck me as physically the size of a Pontiac, and with the distributor in the back. Though at that angle, I was like, well, it's not real. It's not a Pontiac. What is it? So I asked the gentleman behind the booth, and he said, no, it's a Y block. So, that's pretty cool with a little supercharger on it like that. I think that's a supercharger. But here they advertising their Model T, Model A chassis. Someone here took a 1-ton truck, heavily modified it, put a dump bed on it, of course, purely as a show vehicle. There's a nice little write-up on it right there on the windshield. You can pause it when we get to it. I got a close-up of it. And this is it's a nice little rig, a dumpy there. Go ahead and pause it here if you want to read it. And it was always intended as a show truck, since it was converted into this dump truck configuration. Neat little truck. I dig it. If you notice, it's only got singles on it. Well, it's a duals on the back, but the front is a single setup. So I suspected it really wouldn't carry a hell of a lot of weight. It might, but probably not. And you just generally just got a lot of really beautiful mid-50s Fords like this one. I really like that paint job. Not 56 right there. And there were quite a few 56s being the first Ford pickup truck, F100, to really get quite popular to hot rod and fix up, back in the 80s, whilst this was a new truck. And the simple fact of the matter is, this truck here, it, to me, is a perfectly viable truck for just doing truck-like things with. So seeing it set up or polished up as a show truck is interesting. It's certainly old enough, the number of years it has under its hood, number of miles under its wheels. It's certainly earned a rather comfortable life as a show truck. Almost looked like that was a unibody, which I need to keep my eyes out. Maybe there are a few more of the old unibody style F100s which was at the time they proved to be rather. I think they were a decent seller, but they proved to be not very popular long term. 20,500 for this 55, all set up. Once again, the forward tilting roof. Pretty neat, actually, having a little Honda in the bed like that. Another Coyote swap, I believe. Yep. As you go along, you should keep track of all these really cool trucks. We covered every one that was there. They'll be in this video. And you should mention what truck really struck you, what combination you thought was particularly cool. Lots of Windsor blocks. I think that's a 351 there. Too big to be the 302, the short deck Windsor, but nonetheless, really sharp looking, was it 34? So, kind of nice to see it with the fenders on it and the running boards. Here is a Ranchero with FE motor, looks like. No, excuse me, I'm mistaken. That's a 351 Cleveland. I'm incorrect. That is a 351 Cleveland. So another Windsor, which is a great motor, especially for that size, those mid-50s trucks, because they're not terribly heavy. So putting a Windsor in it, that's a big window version. Here is like a, well, I think that's a 53 or 54, probably 54. Let's see. I think, well, okay, and it's got the Y block in it, so probably the original, it was one of the original options you could get was with the Y block in it. I don't know if that's the original Y block or not, but that's really cool. I kind of appreciate the ones with the original engines in them. Because, yeah, I don't know. It's LS swaps, Coyote swaps. Those are the setup du jour. Here's some patina rig. Here's another patina rig. You wonder how much of the patina is real and how much of it is just was deliberately created for the sake of the show, or for showing it. Original flathead, or a flathead. I assume it's the original flathead, being an F100, or excuse me, an F1. Now I like this one. This one's heavily modified. It's got a big block Ford in it, the 460. The heads on it, and I zoom in on it right here. Those are trick flow heads for a 429 or a 460. And I think that's pretty cool. I bet that's pretty fun truck to tootle around in. Kind of reminiscent of my C10, though this is set up for a little more off-road with the King shocks and the lift. Though it's two-wheel drive, it's not as extreme as the pre-runner up front that we saw. Though it is getting close with the shocks actually extending up into the bed and that nice big hoop there like that. Good times. This is a 40, I believe. I think this is a 1940. In fact, I think we find out here pretty quick. I wonder what's under in it. It's pretty common to see the it's a small block Chevy. Pretty common to see the beds, the bed floors raised up in order to fit different suspension. Small block Chevy with dual Edelbrock carbs. That's pretty cool. It's got air conditioning. And it's a 56. But you make room for the suspension, you lift the floor up a little bit of the bed, and I had to do that in my C10, so it's something to do. in order to really get them to sit low, you got to lift it up a lot. And that inevitably results in loss of use as a pickup truck. Now, for trucks like these, you're not going to be hauling a ton of hay in the bed. You're not going to be hauling manure in them. So, of course, that's not a big deal. Now, for me, my trucks, I like to use as trucks and haul engines and transmissions, oh my. But it is still pretty cool to see all of these really beautifully done up show vehicles. A lot of people have really put a lot of time and effort to make their dream come true with what they got. Here's a pretty cool crew cab setup. I don't know if this generation was crew cab was available with that generation or not. Someone can tell me. If not, whoever did the custom work of stretching the cab is done a beautiful job. Now, in the U.S., they did not sell any Mercury pickup trucks. However, at this show, there were several. That was a Canadian option, a Canadian setup because of, well, the unique nature of Canada's, I assume that's a big block, like a 460. The Canadian market, they wanted to sell pickup trucks at the Mercury dealership, so they put stamped Mercury on some pickup trucks and sold them up to our friends in the Great White North. Of course, here is the build progression via pictures. You can definitely stop and take a look at that if you so choose and would like to see the progression of what it takes to do one of these. Interestingly, person has a you can pop open the bed like that. Obviously, one is to gas it up because gas fills back there, but it's a short bed, and then he's got the crew cab. So this is probably a long bed F-150, and then they stretched the cab. I'm curious about the doors, how they did I'm curious about the doors. Now, the rears being it's a supercharged Coyote. The rears being suicide like that, it's clearly a very much a custom. It's very cleanly done. It's beautifully done. Whoever did it can be very, very proud. Here's a 54 with the Vampire grill, I believe. We have one of those. If you're interested, it's for sale. Let's see. I think that's a 53, I believe. There next to it. I do like that suede black. I think that's when done well, that is a very nice color combination. And there's a better one here that is a suede black like that with red accents, and I think that's exceptionally sharp. It's hard to beat a bright red, race car red, hot rod red, color coat like that. Of course, like everything, everyone is usually got stuff for sale, though this event does not have a swap meet. People were definitely showing off that they could. Of course, here's a truck delivery with looks like a Windsor to me. Someone can correct me on that. Now, one of the challenges when filming events is the other spectators, and they have every bit of the right to be there, especially they're sitting there talking, especially the owner themselves sitting there talking. So one of the challenges is filming around people, because I'm not really interested in capturing what the people who are around. I'm more interested in filming the vehicles and get there to get good ideas on what we can do with our vehicles. So it's a case where you're always shooting around them as much as possible. And so when I do a really high shot down, it's probably because I'm trying to go up and over some spectators who are enjoying the vehicle in their own way, and I don't want to step in between them and the truck, or at least as little as possible. My neighbor growing up had one like that, cream and brown one. He drove it every day. Now that was in the 80s, so it was a 30-year-old truck at the time, not a 50 or 70, 60-year-old truck. But a lot of cool trucks. Now the other thing too with the cross I-beams, it's hard to lower them like that. It's a challenge. You have to, and for a long time it was, I don't want to say impossible, but it was something that no one did. Fords, usually you saw Fords jacked up or you saw them stock height because that was the easiest way to have them with the cross I-beam suspension. But in starting sometime in the 90s, the first time I saw a lowered F-Series was in the 90s. Here's another Mercury. I am curious if it's an actual Mercury or if VIN number. I didn't look at the VIN number. And another Mercury as well. I'm curious if they went ahead and took actually got Canadian Mercury trucks and have brought them down and registered them here. Or if they just bought the Mercury specific components and put them on their rig. Blown Coyote of some sort, or mod motor at least. I don't know if it's a Coyote or not. But, and I imagine we probably have examples of Mercury's trucks, them series trucks, that some are just got the Mercury parts on them, but they were a U.S. production F series. And we probably got some that are actually M series with the M series VIN number, and were imported from Canada, driven down from Canada. Now there were a lot of participants from all over. This is the Western Nationals, which who knows how far east people came for, but they certainly came from all around here, as all up and down the West Coast. There are people who were here from Central California. That's an example of a raised bed, like I was saying, the bed floor to fit. Now this person here, they must have just got back from Power Tour, because I think Power Tour was ended last weekend. So now I had to take a few double takes on this one. Cause something doesn't fit. These things are the same and this one is different. Anyways, if you've been watching for a while, watching my coverage of these events all over the place. Sorry, a little close up. I was trying to say something to the camera, but then, of course, the background music wouldn't let me. I love Rivieras. I love Buicks. So, this was a nice opportunity to, something a little different. It didn't fit with the overall theme of the show, but a little rebellious, showing up with the GM luxury car to the Ford pickup truck show. And it's amazing. I have to cop to being starting to get old, because so many of these trucks were just trucks for so long. So many of these from the 60s and 70s were common farm trucks that were just being flogged, hauling crap in my youth, that walking around. Now they're supercharged Coyote or mod motor. It's dual overhead cam, so it could be one of the dual overhead cam mod motors and not necessarily the Coyote, but manual transmission there, 6-speed, I believe. And so it's, I guess it's just the natural progression of time that these vehicles have done their time, have served their time as farm trucks, as grocery getters, as crap haulers, and now they're getting the respect that they deserve, getting nice paint jobs, getting all the rust repaired, getting the modern drivetrains and upgraded brakes and suspension components, and getting the love that they deserve. It's hard to argue. I mean, they're good, they're sharp looking vehicles. My inclination is still to get one that's in good enough shape and just use it to haul crap. For a while, we were in between 3/4 ton pickup trucks. I was really looking at a 70 to 75 F250 with the 390s, and the 4-speed as just a solid truck to haul crap with. So seeing all of these F100s, F150s, F250s, F350s, etc., polished up, dolled up, built up, kind of nice. I dig it. I think giving them the love and respect that they've earned, because none of these, have had an easy life. Especially, Fords, for whatever reason, they find themselves, Fords are the perennial favorites for farm use, and farm use is the hardest use because they're overworked, and maintenance is done sparingly to them. So here's a cool old 32 to 34 pickup there. I think it's well done. It looks pretty nice. I dig it. I dig this overall style. Small block Chevy in it, which, there for a long time. If you wanted some cheap performance, and it's still the case, if you want cheap performance, you build a small block Chevy or an LS motor. 34, so we know. Now, the interesting thing is the 32 to 34 all were very much the same sheet metal. Same evolution of engines that were available, but so it is nice seeing the prevalence of actual Ford drivetrains in these Ford vehicles. I believe that's an FE motor. Could be wrong. I could easily be wrong. I'm not sure. Sure looks like an FE, the way the distributor is canted like that. I didn't get a good enough look at the whether or not the intake goes underneath the valve covers, which is dead giveaway. It's an FE motor and kind of a weird design, if you ask me. But, hey, people trying different stuff. LS, I believe. Now, I took some extra long footage of the hood system. So I was thinking about copying it because for our early mid-50s F100s, we are going to be building or having the queue. And I do like these early 60s F100s. They're pretty. I dig their body style. I don't know if I like them more than the mid 50s, but And all the Ford trucks are pretty cool. And once again, everything's for sale. $8,500 for a running, driving, nice quality truck. That seems like a pretty fair price if you ask me. But another Windsor block. If you notice, the distributor on the Windsor up front is vertical, straight up and down, where the FE is canted. Now the Y block's canted, but it's at the back of the engine. Here's another mid-50s. I really like this shade of blue. I think it's pretty sharp. I don't know if that's Ford Racing blue or not, but I think it's pretty sharp looking combination with dual filter cap. And when it comes to F-150 Lightnings, this is the one I think of when everyone says it. This being what the early aughts version of the Lightning. The current electric one, calling an electric pickup truck Lightning, that's a good idea. Especially if you already have the copyright on naming your truck Lightning. But yeah, you say Lightning and that's what I think of. Now, it says 390 on it. Distributor, I didn't get a good look at the intake manifold, but if you notice, the distributor is up vertical. So I'm wondering if what I just said about the canted distributor is correct or not. I'm second guessing myself. Go ahead and leave a comment down below. Let me know if I was incorrect on that or not. I'll have to look in under the hood of Big Blue here in a minute and figure that out. Of course, it could just be a different air cleaner and a different engine, or it could be something that's bored and stroked with the air cleaner been stroked out to 390, or it's just the air cleaner on 351 Windsor. Yeah, who knows? Or it could be a 351 Windsor bored and stroked out to 390. That could easily be the case too. That would be a good setup. You know, it's always neat seeing the plaques like that, the show car plaques like that. Pretty standard small block Ford. I think they called this the Ford Lightning 1.0. Cute name. You know, if it was a supercharged small block Ford, I think it would be more appropriate to call it the Lightning 1.0. But, you know, And one thing about all these trucks is flathead, very nice. You know, when was the restoration occurred? You know, some of these are clearly, you know, based upon the combination, fairly recent. You know, if it's got a Coyote motor, and it's probably been the last less than 5 years. Whilst if it's got like this combination, this truck here, part or all of the restoration, the hot rodding effort with this 56 could have easily happened in the 90s or even earlier, the 80s. It might have had a restoration in the 80s. It was really hopped up, and then it's been reworked a couple times as time has gone on. That's another thing too to keep in mind. Like this truck here with the small block Chevy in it. It might have been. It's probably been through multiple rebuilds, being a 32 to 34 Ford pickup. It AC, old school AC, the cowl vent. It could have easily been hot rodded in the 70s and then restored in the 80s and then redone in the 90s. You know, every so often it is redone. That was another 390 according to the badge. However, the intake manifold does not go underneath the valve covers, so I don't think it's a 390. I think that's a 351 Cleveland. They might have bored and stroked out because the valve covers look like 351 Cleveland that they bored and stroked out to 390, which that would be a screamer motor. That would be pretty hot. So keep that in mind. File that away. Because again, the Clevelands, like the Windsors, have the vertical center front distributor. Okay, so I went ahead and took a minute to inspect the Ford engines we have here on the ranch, and both the FE as well as the 351 Cleveland, the distributor looks like that. It's sort of in the middle of vertical, offset to slightly to the driver's side so it lines up with the side of the camshaft. So I'm not quite clearly an expert on the Ford motors, identifying them perfectly with a quick glance, like I am, say, I'm a small block Chevy, thusly like this. But yeah, so those trucks with the 390 and 390s in them, those could easily be 390 FE motors or that 390 decals. Obviously the low deck Windsor is really easy to spot because it is a very diminutive engine, very tidy little package. But when you start talking 351 Windsor, start talking FE, start talking 351 Cleveland, obviously there's dramatic differences between them. I'm just not quite sharp enough to spot them at a quick glance. Here's that's a Y block. That looks like it is a beautifully restored, all original F100 early 60s example. Nice big window, sharp looking truck. So if you've already typed out an angry answer to my question of what's the difference, comment, feel free to leave it, because even negative feedback is still feedback and counts as engagement. And I appreciate your educational comment. Now, interestingly, this has, for a mid-50s truck, that had something approaching in this one as well. They have the stock hinges, which you see how far open the hood is, and that's about as far, another wide block, and that's about as far open as you generally get with that hood configuration. And you can easily tweak the hell out of it. And then also getting the hood closed, it's I don't like them. I don't like those hoods. The tilt forward ones like this one here work a lot better. So I was looking at the flat valve covers on this one, and obviously aftermarket valve covers, but makes me suspect they are there's a tune port injection, small block Chevy. Which there were actually surprisingly, there was like 3 or 4 of those there, which was surprising because that definitely dates the build, especially those billet hangers on the side there. That definitely dates this build to, mid to late 90s. Because how many people have kept the tune port injected small block Chevy around? Don't get me wrong, it's a very good engine. Lots of bottom end torque. That's the reason why they did them that way. But they run out of breath pretty quick because the long intake runners and so forth don't lend themselves to high RPM power. I believe that's a 351 Windsor would be my guess. Feel free to correct me if that's a... I don't think that's a low deck. Looks too big to be a low deck. I think, this is probably a 351 as well with that tunnel ram. You got to say, I like tunnel rams. I want to actually build something with a tunnel ram on it. Unfortunately, what I want to build with tunnel rams are, as far as I know, aren't available or haven't been available in some time. So finding a tunnel ram intake for like a Pontiac is going to be kind of a thrill. But I kind of like this one. I like how bare bones it was. FE block, I believe, which fits with the truck, is the vintage of the truck being a bump side like that. This looks like a nice
Very
little
cool
59 Ranchero.
I don't know. I like it. I like the color combinations. That powder blue with the white.
Ranchero.
Slight
Anyways,
off-white. I like that.
very cool.
Slightly off-white.
Very
like
nice.
eggshell
Very nice
off-white.
looking Ranchero. I like the powder blue and then off-white. Nice combination. Powered by Ranchero. Now, did those tilts forward as well? Yeah, it looks like it because it looks like the factory hood latch right there on the firewall. I like that shade of green on this one. This one here is clearly a real hot rod with the racy removable steering wheel like that. Got the cool, it's an interesting badge. You kind of wonder who made that badge. But there you go. Another Coyote swap. Willwood brakes. I'd be tempted not to run Willwood mostly because I want to be able to find the parts. Now here's a pretty cool dent side. That Banks power gives away what's lurking under the hood right there. 6BT 24 valve. Very cool. That's pretty bonkers. I wonder what. It's interesting. That's an F100. I wonder what they did on the frame and the chassis and so forth to take Cummins power. Now, this is an interesting truck. F200. I am unfamiliar with an F200. It looks like it's stock. I'm wondering if this is like a light 3/4 ton or a heavy half ton. If someone would go ahead and let me know in the comments what an F200 is. I'm wondering if it's like a Mexico market truck and not like a U.S. market. If you'd let me know, I'd appreciate it. Surprisingly, I think this was the heaviest truck in the show. This is being an F350. I was a little bit surprised by that. I would have thought that there would be, like I said, some COEs or some F600s or something. Some of the actual commercial type trucks, medium duty trucks, much like my N600. Once again, maybe next year when we come back to this thing, we'll polish up the N600 and go ahead and take it. Now I saw my hand flash in there real quick, and suddenly the image quality is better. It's because I had a big greasy fingerprint on the middle of the camera from changing the battery. But now, of course, this is occurring in California, this show. It is something where everyone, if it's a 1976 or newer, you have to pass smog. Now, obviously, smog requirements on trucks is a lot easier to pass than smog requirements for a sedan that's 76 or newer. But I think you still have catalytic converters, etc. So, something to keep in mind for some of these vehicles that are newer than 1976 is they're still required to be smog compliant. Now, it said 75 and older are supposed to still have the smog equipment on them, and that smog equipment is supposed to be functional, but no one bothers to check. Now, if you do an engine swap, you're supposed to, your engine you swap in is required to have all the emissions equipment for the year make of that engine, the vehicle it came out of. So, just some food for thought. It's a big reason why here at the ranch, our fleet is almost entirely 75 and older, so that we can we're a little freer on the emissions requirements, meeting emissions requirements. Now, one thing nice about all of these, about a truck, and I think one of the reasons why trucks have become real popular hot rod options in the last couple decades, last few decades, 2-3 decades, has been the fact that sedans continue to get smaller and smaller, and there's less and less room to fit a decently sized engine under the hood, where the trucks still have quite a bit of room under the hood to fit almost anything and everything. So, and you, generally speaking, you can pick up a truck for a fraction of the price that the same year two-door sedan is. So, what we're seeing overall is a gradual transition from, as the cost of a 1970 Chevelle, two-door Chevelle has gotten to the point, the price that even garbage is not cheap, and then you got to spend a lot of money fixing it. You can, at least for the most part, until recently, you could pick up a 1955 Ford F100, that's in decent shape for a couple grand, $2, $3, $4,000, depending upon, condition, amount of rust, etc. And then you can go ahead and fit whatever engine in it. And that's, I think, where people then get motivated to go ahead and turn around and spend big bucks on suspension. Now, that said, if you're buying the vehicle from scratch, and then you're gonna, you got to put serious money into the chassis in order to get it to handle. Maybe you're better off buying something that starts off with good handling. That said, your typical American iron sedan, for the most part, even the ones that theoretically sort of almost handled, i.e. your Mustang F-body, from the factory, they didn't handle very good. They're not very good at all. And they do require nearly the same sort of level of modifications to go and autocross or canyon carve as it does one of these pickups. Now, that said, they start off with a lot better weight distribution than one of these pickups do. These pickups, very nose heavy, very tail light, is another way to put it. And as a result, can get crossed up pretty quick and pretty easily. So, take that into consideration when you're looking at this stuff and considering what you're going to get, what you want to do with it. Now, there's another thing about just being contrarian about taking something that was never intended to quote unquote handle and making it handle and demonstrating your engineering and fabrication prowess by making one of these pickup trucks, a canyon carver, etc. So, pick and choose. It's entirely up to you. And if you just happen to inherit Grandpa's, lowered F100 C10 or something that has a Corvette motor in it, i.e., tune port injected small block Chevy. Yeah, once again, the stock hinges and how actually didn't seem to be very many stock hinges on these F100s, these mid-50s F100s. Anyways, I digress. If you get the truck for cheap or free, inheritance, etc., then going around and spending the money on building it as a handling vehicle, it makes a lot more sense. So, food for thought. Just me rambling. So I think I've seen this one here with the pink highlights, the white with the pink highlights. I've seen that at a different show somewhere. And I'm sure a few of these I've seen around because it's, a lot of the participants in this show are relatively local and certainly going to see at the Pomona Swap Meet tomorrow. Here we got 2 or 3 panel trucks all sitting next to each other. This one here, a small block Chevy, very tightly packaged in there. I think it says in here what year it is, 41. So, nice little, I don't know if this was the panel truck section or just a couple guys with panel trucks parked next to each other, but they're all very cool. This one got a blower on it, which is bananas. Look at the size of that thing. Huge old blower in that small block. kind of one of those things that almost makes it seem like it's going to be rather hairy to drive. It's a 51 F1 panel truck. Now here is what I would call a very, very modified custom F100. I would probably date that as like a 90s type, Chip Foose wannabe build, but maybe not wannabe is I don't want to diminish it. There's a lot of work went into that truck. There's another small block Chevy in this 56 Smurf Blue F1. Very nice interior. So we are coming to the end here, wrapping up our very special coverage of the F100 Western Nationals. Very good show, very nice. This is the only first-gen Bronco that I recall in the whole show. And since you just watched the whole show, and I appreciate that very much, you can confirm it. I'm going to do a little quick stroll past the vendors here on the promenade, going back to the parking area, and some of the nice folks that are offering their wares and showing off what they got. I have to say that it was a nicely organized event. Hats off to the folks who put it together. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, old thumbs up. And if you haven't done so already, please subscribe. And until next time, have a F100-tastic day.